Gustave Caillebotte's greatest and most ambitious works are street pictures of modern life in the new section of Paris where he himself lived. Pierre-Auguste Renoir celebrates the spectacle of Paris in the scintillating shorthand of Impressionism. People look like flames in Claude Monet's boulevard scene. Caillebotte, in his city pictures, wants us to understand the relationships between people, how they negotiate the newness of modern life. More like a poet than a sociologist, he describes the streets, the architecture, and the melancholy isolation that pervades his small section of the right bank. Like the man in the top hat at the bridge overlooking the tracks of the train station, Caillebotte observes and distills every aspect of this fascinating world. He documents the ambiguity of different social classes: a gentleman, a woman in the latest spring fashion, perhaps an expensive courtesan, and a workman, sharing the streets that only a few years earlier had been battlegrounds during the riots of the Commune in 1871. Perhaps the fact that Gustave Caillebotte was rich and didn't need to sell his pictures gave him freedom to see in a unique way. His best paintings are very individual and full of witty surprises. Caillebotte paints shirts hung out to dry in the summer breeze, as if they have as much right to be the subject of a painting as anything else. He brings his unique vision to still life painting as well. Caillebotte paints a carcass of veal, decked out in flowers and ribbons, as if seen in a fancy butcher shop. He paints luxury fruit arranged by the grocer instead of constructing his own vision as Monet did. In this picture, a poodle named Dick takes his master for a walk. Caillebotte's friend, Richard Gallo, is dressed for the Paris streets and shares a haircut with his dog. The patterned sofa in Caillebotte's Paris apartment becomes a favorite object, playing many different roles. In a scene of domestic tranquility or boredom, the sofa accommodates a tiny man, reduced by Caillebotte's radical perspective, who reads at a seemingly great distance from his companion. In a self-portrait, the sofa holds a friend. Renoir's Moulin de la Galette, which Caillebotte bought from the artist, sparkles on the wall, reversed because Caillebotte was looking in a mirror. On a much more private occasion, the same sofa cradles a young woman, Caillebotte's model. She lies quietly, having removed her clothes and rough shoes. Unlike a typical academic painting such as Cabanel's Birth of Venus, there are no classical trappings. Where Cabanel's Venus is nude, Caillebotte's model is naked. Caillebotte was born in 1848 to a rich conservative family. His father made his fortune manufacturing textiles, among them uniforms and blankets, for the French army during the Franco-Prussian War. The Caillebottes lived in a big, lavishly upholstered house. In 1875, Caillebotte painted his younger brother, René, looking out of the window of the family home. Caillebotte's paintings are full of repeated images. His work records the patterns in his parents' near claustrophobic houses, where mostly members of the family are shown. Caillebotte's brother, Martial, was a musician and amateur photographer. As in many Catholic upper-middle-class families, the women were industrious, always sewing or knitting or reading. Time not spent in service or self-improvement was wasted time in this family. As was appropriate, the Caillebottes also owned a summer house at Hyères, a half-hour southwest of Paris by train, where the sewing, knitting, and reading continued out of doors. Only the dog is allowed to sleep in the sun. It was quite a grand house, and the gardens were formally landscaped. The Caillebotte boys lived a sporting life, swimming in the river, rowing, fishing. The gardens of his childhood were a favorite subject of Caillebotte's. He painted the gardeners in bare feet and straw hats, watering row upon row of green beans, set at intervals as in his father's textiles. The covers for the young plants line up as do the poplars that flank the kitchen gardens. Gardens and textiles are both set out in patterns, and Caillebotte enjoyed the repetitions, orders, and intervals. Some gardens draw their imagery from the gardens of Islam, which represent paradise. Life in upper-middle-class France was governed by rules of conduct, passed down from generation to generation. There were responsibilities to match the privileges. Caillebotte did well in school, as was expected. He received his law diploma in 1870. A few months later, he joined the army and served in the Franco-Prussian War. In 1872, having fulfilled his obligations to his family, Caillebotte decided he wanted to be an artist. He studied with an academic painter, Léon Bonnat, and was soon accepted at France's traditional art school, the École des Beaux-Arts, in 1873. In 1874, Caillebotte's father died and left him a great deal of money, enough so that he didn't have to earn a living. He began to collect the most advanced art of his day, Impressionist paintings. Collecting this art gave Caillebotte the chance to meet fellow artists with different goals and experiences. He bought paintings by Degas and Cézanne, by Pissarro, Sisley, Renoir, Monet, and Manet. He bought their most radical pictures, the hardest ones to sell. In 1875, Caillebotte submitted this picture to the Salon. It was rejected. Caillebotte never looked back. The very next year, in 1876, he showed the floor scrapers in the second Impressionist exhibition. The picture was both a success and a scandal. It showed half-naked young workmen in an elegant upper-middle-class apartment, much like the artist's own. Having been rejected at the Salon, as had many of the Impressionists, Caillebotte became an important part of a new family, the artists who were celebrating modern Paris as a city of spectacles, cafes, bustling street life, railway stations, and grand boulevards. While other Impressionists focused on the sociability of the new city, Caillebotte was interested in the effect of modern Paris on the individual. He used space, near and far, and plunging perspectives to increase the sense of loneliness and mystery we feel in these paintings. One of the most formidable rituals in Caillebotte's social class was luncheon at home with the family. He painted this scene at his mother's house in 1876. She sits far away at the head of the table as the family butler serves. Caillebotte's younger brother, René, is absorbed with his meal. There is no communication between the people. Caillebotte's place, and ours as viewers, seems about to fall off the table. The picture, very dark, is dominated by the family glassware. Caillebotte again painted the lunch table, unpopulated, 3 years later in 1879, after both his mother and younger brother René had died. After their mother's death, Gustave and his brothers Martial and Alfred, a priest, sold the family house in Paris and the country house at Hyères. Martial and Gustave moved to a nice corner apartment on the 6th floor of a building on the fashionable Boulevard Haussmann. Their lives and decor changed. Friends were welcome in the apartment for card games and portrait sittings. The walls were painted a cool gray. The red upholstered chairs remained. With his move to an apartment, Caillebotte achieved a new point of view. He had a balcony. A balcony gives you access to whatever is going on outside. Caillebotte's point of view shifts from being someone on the streets to that of a fascinated voyeur. He painted a woman looking through her proper lace curtains at a person across the street, looking back. Her companion, unaware of the intrigue, stolidly reads his paper. In another picture, the balcony itself becomes the subject of an almost abstract composition, with only a glimpse of street life beyond. In 1887, Martial Caillebotte married, and he and Gustave gave up their shared apartment. Gustave moved to live year-round in a suburb of Paris, where he pursued his increasingly passionate interests in gardening and sailing. He still returned to Paris for dinners at the Café Riche with Impressionist friends who were in town. Caillebotte exchanged gardening tips with Monet, who was then at Giverny. Charlotte Berthier, Caillebotte's companion, was with him, and he painted her in his rose garden. In the suburbs, Caillebotte divided his time between painting, sailing, and gardening. There are photographs taken by Martial of Caillebotte's life. Gustave horsing around with friends and dogs, working on his garden, launching the sailboats he had designed. He called one of his boats the roast beef, which suggests the same surprising originality that characterizes many of his paintings. Caillebotte died in 1894 of a stroke. He was 45. Although his career was short, 20 years, he painted close to 500 pictures, most of which remained with his family. In his will, Caillebotte left his incredible collection of Impressionist paintings to France. Today, nearly 40 of these pictures form the nucleus of the Impressionist holdings of the Musée d'Orsay. In his own time, with his highly crafted paintings, Caillebotte was seen by many critics as more traditional than his fellow artists, and therefore more acceptable. We see with the eyes of our own time widescreen movies, strange perspectives, an emphasis on the unique and individual vision. When we look at Caillebotte's amazing group of street pictures today, he seems modern in a different way than his contemporaries. Henri Cartier-Bresson, the great French photographer of the 20th century, saw a photograph of Paris Street, rainy day, on a bulletin board at the Museum of Modern Art, and said to the curator, "Who shot that?" Photographers Robert Frank, Lee Friedlander, and Gary Winogrand see the urban scene in a way similar to Caillebotte. The city is both alienating and alluring. People are alone while sharing common space. Caillebotte's paintings, extreme overhead views of Paris streets, find echoes in Giacometti's sculptures of figures in urban isolation, and in the eerie perspectives of the Russian photographer Alexander Rodchenko. The same bristling energy that exists in the black and white paintings of Franz Klein has its counterpart in Caillebotte's bridge study. His paving stones suggest the minimal art of Carl Andre. His sweeping, empty landscapes occur in the work of Anselm Kiefer. His audacious laundry in the wind parallels the silken sails of Robert Rauschenberg. In 1973, Richard Estes chose to emphasize the rapid perspective and interchangeability of Paris streets, as did Caillebotte almost 100 years ago. Gustave Caillebotte has at last escaped from his traditional family and his ambiguous place in the story of Impressionism to reach his own unique and secure position as a modern artist.